The Korvax warship entered the Sol system with weapons ready. Commander Threll stood on the bridge and looked at the small blue planet on his screen. This was Earth, home of the humans. His mission was simple: make them submit or destroy them. The Korvax Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They conquered through fear. They burned worlds that refused to bow. They made examples of species that dared to resist. This is how empires survived. This is how the strong ruled the weak. "Commander," said his tactical officer, "we are detecting multiple vessels approaching. They are small and do not appear to be warships." Threll clicked his mandibles in amusement. "They send trading ships to face a Korvax destroyer. These humans are either very brave or very stupid." The human ships came closer. They were indeed small, with no visible weapons. One of them sent a communication request. Threll allowed it, curious to hear what excuse these soft creatures would give before their world burned. A human female appeared on the screen. She had brown skin and dark hair, and she was smiling, as if she was greeting a friend instead of facing death. "Hello there. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth trading vessel Harmony. Welcome to our solar system. We don't get many visitors out here. Would you like to come down to Earth for some food and conversation? We just finished our harvest festival and we have more pie than we know what to do with." Threll stared at the screen. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever greeted him this way. Usually there was screaming, begging, or threats. Sometimes all three, but never an invitation to eat pie. "Human," he said, his voice cold and hard, "I am Commander Threll of the Korvax Empire. I have come to claim your world for the Empire. You will submit to our rule or you will be destroyed. There will be no other options." The human woman's smile did not fade. If anything, it grew warmer. "Oh, I see. That sounds very stressful for you, Commander Threll, having to travel all this way just to threaten people. That must be exhausting. Are you sure you wouldn't like to come down and rest a bit? Maybe talk things over. My grandmother always said that problems seem smaller after a good meal." "You do not understand," Threll said, his voice rising. "I am not asking, I am telling. Submit or die." "I heard you the first time," Captain Chen said gently, "and I understand you're very serious about this. But we humans don't really do the whole submission thing. It's not our style. What we do is make friends, so I'm inviting you to be our friend. No tricks, no traps, just friendship. What do you say?" Threll ended the communication. He turned to his tactical officer. "Prepare to fire on the nearest population center. We will teach these humans what happens to those who refuse the Korvax." The weapons charged. The targeting systems locked onto a city called Mumbai, home to 20 million humans. Threll felt nothing as he prepared to kill them all. He had done this many times before. It was simply how things worked in the universe. Then something strange happened. The human trading ships moved between the warship and the planet. They formed a line, their tiny hulls blocking the firing path. They had no shields. They had no weapons. They had no way to survive what was coming. But they did not move. Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen again. She was still smiling, but now there was something else in her eyes. Something that looked like steel wrapped in silk. "Commander Threll, if you want to hurt our people, you'll have to go through us first. We won't fight you because we don't believe in violence, but we won't move either. We'll stay right here until you change your mind or until we're all dead. That's what friends do. They protect each other." "You cannot stop me," Threll said. "Your ships will be dust in seconds." "I know," Captain Chen said, "but there's something you should understand about humans. When you hurt one of us, the others don't run away. They come closer. They come to help. Right now, every nation on Earth is watching this conversation, and they all just volunteered to stand with us. So if you destroy us, more ships will come, and if you destroy them, more will come after that. You can kill us all, Commander, but you cannot make us afraid, and you cannot make us stop caring about each other." Threll hesitated. This was not how conquered species behaved. They were supposed to scatter. They were supposed to panic. They were supposed to choose survival over solidarity, but these humans were doing the opposite. They were gathering together, not because they thought they could win, but because they refused to let each other die alone. It was the most foolish thing Threll had ever seen, and somehow it was also the bravest. He did not fire. He told himself it was because destroying unarmed ships would bring no glory. He told himself it was a tactical decision, nothing more. But deep inside, in a place he did not like to visit, Threll felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt uncertain. "I will return," he said to Captain Chen. "And when I do, I will bring a fleet that will darken your skis. This is not over." "I know it's not over," Captain Chen said. "It's just beginning. And when you come back, Commander, I hope you'll be ready to try something different. The door to friendship is always open. You just have to walk through it." The Korvax warship turned and jumped away, leaving the humans floating in the darkness between worlds. On the bridge of the Harmony, Captain Chen let out a long breath. Her hands were shaking. She had not been sure they would survive. She had not been sure of anything except that running away was not an option. Her first officer, a tall man named James, put a hand on her shoulder. "That was either the bravest or the dumbest thing I've ever seen," he said. "Probably both," Sarah admitted, "but it worked. We're still here. For now, he'll be back, and he'll bring friends." Sarah nodded. "Then we better make some friends of our own. Send a message to every species in this sector. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we stood against the Korvax and survived. Tell them that Earth is offering something the Korvax never could: partnership without fear, cooperation without conquest. Tell them they're welcome here, all of them." James raised an eyebrow. "You think anyone will come?" "I don't know," Sarah said, "but I know that fear can only hold people together for so long. Eventually, they start looking for something better, and when they do, we'll be here." The message went out across the stars, carried by ships and signals and whispers in the dark. It reached 100 worlds, 1,000 more. Most ignored it. They had learned long ago that hope was dangerous, but some listened. Some remembered what it was like to dream of something more than survival. Some looked at the small blue planet called Earth and wondered if maybe, just maybe, the humans were right. The universe had empires built on fear, but humanity was building something else. They were building on friendship, and that made all the difference. On the planet Voss, in the outer reaches of Korvax space, a creature named Kira heard the human message and began to cry. She had not cried since she was a child. Crying was weakness, and weakness meant death. But something in the human words broke through the walls she had built around her heart. Kira was a Vossan, a species of small reptilian beings who had been conquered by the Korvax 300 years ago. Her people were slaves now, working in mines and factories, their lives worth less than the machines they operated. They had forgotten what it meant to be free. They had forgotten what it meant to hope. But Kira remembered. Her grandmother had told her stories about the old days before the Korvax came. Stories about families who stayed together, about communities who helped each other, about a world where people were not afraid. Kira had thought they were just fairy tales, dreams from a time that never really existed. Now she was not so sure. She played the human message again. The words were simple, almost childish in their optimism, but there was something underneath them, something real. The humans actually believed what they were saying. They actually thought that friendship could defeat fear. It was the most ridiculous thing Kira had ever heard. And yet she could not stop listening. "What is that?" asked her work partner, an old Vossan named Tor. He looked at her communication device with suspicious eyes. "You know we're not supposed to have those." "It's nothing," Kira said quickly, hiding the device. "Just noise." But Tor had lived too long to be fooled. He reached out and touched her arm, a gesture that was forbidden under Korvax law. Physical contact between slaves was not allowed. It might lead to comfort. It might lead to solidarity. It might lead to resistance. "I heard it too," Tor whispered. The human message, half the mine has heard it by now. The Korvax don't know yet, but they will soon. They always find out. Kira felt fear grip her heart. What do we do? Tor was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that changed everything. What if we answered? Answer how? We don't have ships, we don't have weapons, we don't have anything. We have each other, Tor said. The humans said that's all they had too, and they stood against a Korvax warship and lived. Maybe we've been thinking about this all wrong. Maybe the answer isn't fighting. Maybe the answer is something else. Kira looked at the old Vasan with new eyes. She had always seen him as broken, defeated, just waiting to die. But now she saw something else in his face. She saw a spark that had not quite gone out. What are you suggesting? She asked. Tor smiled. It was a strange expression on his weathered face, like watching a desert bloom after rain. I'm suggesting we try something new. I'm suggesting we stop being afraid. I'm suggesting we become friends. That night in the dark tunnels beneath the mine, a dozen Vasans gathered in secret. They did not plan violence. They did not plot rebellion. They simply sat together and talked. They shared stories from before the conquest. They shared dreams of what might come after. They shared hope. It was a small thing, this gathering. It would not shake the foundations of the Korvax Empire. It would not free anyone or change anything. But it was a beginning. And beginnings, as the humans knew, were the most important part of any journey. The universe had empires built on fear. But on 100 worlds, in 1,000 hidden places, something new was starting to grow. It was small and fragile and easily crushed. But it was also stubborn and persistent and impossible to kill completely. It was friendship, and it was spreading. Commander Threll returned to the Korvax homeworld and reported his failure to the High Council. He expected to be punished, perhaps even executed. Failure was not tolerated in the Empire, but the Council did something unexpected. They listened. They asked questions. They actually seemed interested in what had happened. You say they did not fight? Asked the first counselor, a massive Korvax whose carapace was scarred from 100 battles. They did not fight, Threll confirmed. They simply stood in the way, unarmed, unshielded, unafraid. And you did not destroy them. Threll hesitated. I chose not to. Their destruction would have brought no tactical advantage, and their behavior was confusing. I decided more information was needed. The first counselor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Confusing. Yes, that is the word. These humans confuse me as well. Our spies report that their message is spreading. Other species are listening. Some are even responding. Should we increase patrols? Threll asked. Crack down on communication networks. Perhaps, or perhaps we should try something different. The first counselor leaned forward, his ancient eyes gleaming. Commander Threll, I am going to tell you something that very few know, something about the founding of our empire. Threll waited, barely breathing. 10,000 years ago, we Korvax were not conquerors. We were scientists, explorers, dreamers. We traveled the stars looking for knowledge and connection. We made friends with other species. We shared our discoveries freely. And do you know what happened? No, first counselor. We were betrayed. Our friends turned on us. They took our technology and used it against us. They tried to destroy us completely. We barely survived. And from that day forward, we swore that we would never be vulnerable again. We built our empire on fear because we learned that fear was the only thing we could trust. Threll absorbed this. He had never heard this history before. He had always assumed the Korvax were simply strong, simply superior, simply destined to rule. Learning that they had once been different, that they had once been hurt, changed something in his understanding. Why are you telling me this? He asked. The first counselor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because I am old, Commander. Old enough to wonder if we made the right choice all those years ago. Old enough to see that our empire is strong but our people are hollow. We have conquered 1,000 worlds, but we have no joy, no wonder, no connection. We are alone, surrounded by enemies we created. And the humans. The humans are fools. They will be destroyed by their own trust. It is only a matter of time. The first counselor paused. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder, what if they're right? What if fear was never the answer? What if we've been wrong for 10,000 years? He shook his head as if waking from a dream. But these are old thoughts, useless thoughts. Forget I said them. Go back to your duties, Commander. We will deal with the humans in time. Threll left the council chamber with more questions than answers. He walked through the corridors of the Korvax capital, seeing his people with new eyes. They were strong, yes. They were powerful, yes. But they were also tired. They were also empty. They were also afraid. The first counselor had said fear was the only thing they could trust. But fear was also a prison. And somewhere in the back of Threll's mind, a small voice wondered what it would be like to be free. Back on Earth, Sarah Chen was dealing with the consequences of her actions. The human governments were not pleased. She had made promises on behalf of the entire species without authorization. She had invited aliens to visit without security clearance. She had started something that no one knew how to finish. But she had also done something remarkable. For the first time in history, the nations of Earth were united, not by fear of invasion, but by hope for something better. They had seen the Korvax warship, and they had seen their own people stand against it. They had discovered that they were braver than they knew. "The UN wants to form a committee," said James, reading from his tablet. "The Americans want military readiness. The Chinese want diplomatic protocols. Everyone wants something." "What do the people want?" Sarah asked. James smiled. "The people want pie. Apparently, your pie comment went viral. There are harvest festivals happening on every continent. People are baking and sharing and actually talking to their neighbors for the first time in years. It's kind of amazing." Sarah laughed. It was a strange sound in the middle of so much chaos, but it felt right. "My grandmother would be proud. She always said that food brings people together." "Speaking of together, we have our first visitors." Sarah looked up sharply. "Visitors? What kind of visitors?" "A small ship just entered the system. It's not Korvax. Some species we've never seen before. They're asking for permission to land. They say they want to be friends." Sarah felt her heart lift. It was working. The message was working. Tell them yes. Tell them they're welcome. Tell them to bring their appetites because we have a lot of pie. The ship landed in a field outside Geneva, surrounded by soldiers and scientists and politicians and journalists. But it was Sarah who stepped forward to greet the aliens when they emerged. They were tall and thin, with silver skin and large dark eyes. They looked like creatures from a dream, beautiful and strange. Their leader spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "We are the Silith. We have traveled far to find you. We heard your message. We heard you say that friendship was possible. We have not had friends in a very long time. We have forgotten what it feels like." Sarah reached out her hand, a human gesture that meant nothing to the Silith, but they understood the intention behind it. One of them reached back and their fingers touched. "Welcome to Earth," Sarah said. "Welcome to your new home. Welcome to friendship." The Silith leader's dark eyes seemed to fill with light. "We brought something for you. It is a tradition among our people. When you meet a friend, you share a gift." They produced a small device, no bigger than a human hand. It glowed with a soft blue light. "This is a starseed. If you plant it in your soil, it will grow into a tree that produces fruit containing the essence of our sun. We thought you might like it. We thought it might help you remember us." Sarah took the gift with trembling hands. A tree that grew sunlight. A bridge between worlds made of biology and hope. It was the most precious thing she had ever held. "Thank you," she said, and she meant it with every part of her being. "We have a tradition, too. When friends come to visit, we feed them. Are you hungry?" The Silith leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "We are always hungry, but we have never been asked so kindly. Then come inside. We have a lot to talk about, and more pie than we know what to do with." The soldiers relaxed, the politicians muttered, the journalists recorded everything. But in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was two species, strangers from different stars, choosing to trust each other, choosing to be friends. The universe had empires built on fear, but something new was beginning to grow on a small blue planet called Earth. Something that might, just might, change everything. The future was uncertain. The Korvax were still out there. Danger was everywhere. But for the first time in a very long time, people were not thinking about what might go wrong. They were thinking about what might go right. And that made all the difference. 6 months passed, then a year, then 2. The trickle of visitors became a stream, then a river. Species arrived from every corner of the galaxy. The crystal beings of Nexar, the gas giants of Voltian, the aquatic minds of Deep Kethos. Each brought their own gifts, their own stories, their own hunger for connection. Earth changed. Human cities sprouted alien architecture. Human languages absorbed alien words. Human children played with alien children, not seeing the differences, only the similarities. It was messy and confusing and sometimes dangerous. There were misunderstandings, conflicts, even a few deaths. But the humans did not retreat. They did not build walls. They learned and adapted and grew. The Silith star tree grew in a garden outside Geneva. It was 100 feet tall now, its branches heavy with glowing fruit. People came from all over the world to see it, to taste the sunshine of another star. It became a symbol of what was possible when species reached out instead of pushed away. And the word spread. Through hidden channels and whispered conversations, through stolen messages and secret meetings, beings throughout the galaxy heard about Earth. They heard about a place where fear was not the currency of power. They heard about a species that gave without expecting submission. They heard about friendship. On the planet Voss, Kira listened to these stories and made a decision. She was going to leave. She was going to find the humans and ask them for help. It was probably suicide. The Korvax watched their slaves carefully. Escape was almost impossible. Almost. "You're crazy," said Tor when she told him. "You'll never make it." "Probably not," Kira agreed. "But I have to try. I can't live like this anymore. I can't die like this." Tor was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his worn clothing and pulled out a small object. It was a data chip, battered and old. "This contains everything," he said. "Every crime the Korvax have committed against our people. Every death, every torture, every stolen child. I've been collecting it for years. I was going to destroy it when I died because I thought no one would ever care. But maybe the humans will care. Maybe they can use it." Kira took the chip with shaking hands. "Why didn't you try to escape yourself?" "I'm too old, too slow, but you're not. You have a chance." Tor touched her face, a gesture that still felt forbidden, still felt dangerous. "Go, Kira, find the humans, tell them our story, and if you can, come back for us. Promise me you'll come back." "I promise," Kira said, and she meant it. That night she crept through the mines, through maintenance shafts she had memorized over years of observation, through security gaps she had carefully cultivated. She reached the surface, stole a small mining shuttle, and launched herself into the stars. The Korvax pursuit came quickly. 3 warships, each 100 times larger than her tiny craft. They fired warning shots demanding her surrender. Kira ignored them. She pushed her stolen ship to its limits, burning toward the edge of Korvax space, toward a sector where the humans were rumored to have influence. "Vossen vessel, this is your final warning. Surrender now or be destroyed." Kira's fingers flew over the controls. She was not a pilot. She barely knew what she was doing. But she had come too far to give up now. She had promises to keep. "Any friendly ships in this sector?" she broadcast on an open channel. "This is Kira of Voss. I am fleeing Korvax persecution. I am seeking asylum with the humans of Earth. Please, if anyone can hear me, please help." The Korvax warships closed in, their weapons charged. Kira closed her eyes and thought of Tor, of her grandmother, of all the Vasans who had lived and died in chains. At least she had tried. At least she had not given up. Then a voice crackled through her speaker, a human voice. "Vasan vessel, this is Captain James Mitchell of the Earth ship Endeavor. We hear you. We're coming. Just hold on a little longer." Kira opened her eyes. On her sensors, she saw a fleet of ships emerging from somewhere nearby. They were not warships in the traditional sense. They were a mishmash of designs, human and Silith and Nexari and a dozen other species. They flew together in a formation that should not have worked, a coalition that should not have existed. But they did exist, and they were coming to help her. The Korvax warships hesitated. They had expected to chase down a single fugitive, not to face an entire fleet. This was not in their protocols. This was not how things were supposed to work. "Korvax vessels," said Captain Mitchell, his voice calm but firm, "you are entering territory claimed by the Earth Coalition. The Vasan ship and its occupant are under our protection. We suggest you leave now." "You have no authority here," the Korvax commander replied. "This sector belongs to the Empire. That slave belongs to the Empire." "That's where you're wrong," Mitchell said. "She's not a slave, she's not property, she's a person, and we protect our friends. You would risk war over one fugitive. We would risk anything for anyone who asks for help. That's who we are. That's what we do." The Korvax ships powered down their weapons. They turned and retreated into their own space. They had not expected this. They had not prepared for this. For the first time in 1,000 years, someone had told the Korvax no. Kira wept as the Earth Coalition ships surrounded her. She wept as Captain Mitchell's face appeared on her screen, smiling the same smile that Captain Chen had smiled 2 years ago. She wept as she realized that she was free. "Welcome to the Coalition," Mitchell said. "Welcome to friendship." The news of Kira's rescue spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 100 Korvax-controlled worlds, slaves looked up from their work and wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was hope. On the Korvax homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. "This is unacceptable," growled one of the younger counselors. "We must crush these humans. We must make an example of them." "And how do you propose we do that?" asked the first counselor wearily. "They are not alone anymore. Every species we've oppressed is rallying to their banner. Every enemy we've made is becoming their friend. We cannot fight the entire galaxy." "Then what do we do?" The first counselor was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that none of them expected. "Perhaps we should talk to them." "Talk to humans, to slaves, to friends." The first counselor rose from his seat. He was very old, older than any living Korvax. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species burn and others bloom, and he was tired. "I told Commander Threll once that we built our empire on fear because fear was the only thing we could trust. I was wrong. Fear is not trust. Fear is a cage. We have been trapped inside it for 10,000 years. Perhaps it is time to try something different." "You would have us surrender." "I would have us survive. The humans are not trying to destroy us. They are trying to change us. And maybe that is not such a terrible thing." The council erupted in argument. Some agreed, some refused, some did not know what to think. But the seed had been planted. The idea had taken root. And ideas, as the humans knew, were the most powerful things in the universe. On Earth, Kira stood before the United Nations and told her story. She spoke of slavery and suffering, of hope and resistance, of an old Vasan named Tor who had given her his life's work so that someone might finally know the truth. She spoke of fear and friendship, of what it meant to be alone and what it meant to belong. When she finished, the hall was silent. Then, slowly, the delegates began to applaud. Not because they were supposed to, not because it was diplomatic, but because they were moved. They were changed. They were beginning to understand that the universe was bigger than they had imagined, and that their role in it was more important than they had ever dreamed. Sarah Chen watched from the gallery, tears streaming down her face. She had started this. She had stood in front of a Korvax warship with nothing but words and hope. She had not known what would happen. She had not known if it would work. But it had worked. It was working. Every day more species joined the coalition. Every day the empire of fear grew smaller and the community of friendship grew larger. Every day the universe became a little bit better. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect. There were still conflicts, still misunderstandings, still the vast darkness of space where terrible things could happen. But there was also light. There was also connection. There was also love. The universe had empires built on fear, but humanity had built something different. They had built on friendship, and now that friendship was spreading to every corner of creation, carried by the simple radical belief that kindness was stronger than cruelty and hope was more powerful than despair. Kira looked out at the assembled delegates, at the representatives of 100 worlds united not by conquest but by choice. She thought of Tor, still trapped in the minds of Voss. She thought of her promise. "I have to go back," she said to Sarah later when the ceremony was over. "I promised him. I promised I would come back." Sarah nodded. "I know, and will come with you, all of us. You would risk so much for one planet, for one species." Sarah smiled. It was the same smile she had shown Commander Threll, the same smile that had started everything. "We would risk anything for our friends. That's who we are. That's what we do." Kira reached out and took Sarah's hand. Two beings from different stars, connected by something stronger than blood, stronger than politics, stronger than fear. "Then let's go," Kira said. "Let's bring them home." The liberation of Voss would become one of the most celebrated events in galactic history. The Earth Coalition fleet arrived not with weapons blazing but with doors open, offering not conquest but aid. The Korvax garrison, faced with overwhelming force and nowhere to run, surrendered without a fight. For the first time, Vossans walked free under their own sky. Kira found Tor in the mines exactly where she had left him. He was weaker now, thinner, his scales dull with age and exhaustion. But when he saw her, his eyes filled with tears. "You came back," he whispered. "You actually came back." "I promised," Kira said, helping him to his feet. "Friends keep their promises." She led him to the surface, to the light he had not seen in years. He squinted at the sky, at the stars, at the coalition ships hovering above. He saw Vossans embracing their liberators, saw humans and Silith and a dozen other species working together to heal the wounds of centuries. "How is this possible?" he asked. "How did this happen?" "Friendship," Kira said simply. "They built something new, something that runs on trust instead of fear, and it works, Tor. It actually works." Tor watched a human child hand a piece of fruit to a Vossan child, watched them smile at each other without hesitation or suspicion. He felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been closed for so long he had forgotten it existed. "Maybe the universe is changing," he said softly. "The universe is always changing," Kira replied. "The question is what direction we push it, and the humans, they push toward light." Commander Threll watched the liberation of Voss from his ship, hiding in the shadows at the edge of the system. He should have reported the coalition's location to the High Council. He should have called for reinforcements. He should have done his duty. Instead, he watched. He watched the slaves walk free. He watched species who should have been enemies work together in harmony. He watched the impossible become real. And then he made a decision. He turned his ship away from Korvax space. He set a course for Earth, and he opened a channel to the coalition. "This is Commander Threll of the Korvax Empire. I am requesting asylum. I am requesting friendship." Captain Sarah Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked older than the last time he had seen her, more tired, but she was still smiling. She was always smiling. "Welcome, Commander Threll. We've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" "We've been expecting all of you. Every being who's tired of fear, every being who wants something better. The door is always open. It's just a matter of walking through." Threll felt something warm spread through his chest. It was unfamiliar, uncomfortable, and somehow wonderful. "I don't know how to be a friend," he admitted. "My people forgot long ago. We may need help." "That's okay," Sarah said. "That's what friends are for. We help each other. We teach each other. We grow together. That's how it works." "It seems inefficient," Threll said, but there was no anger in his voice. Only curiosity, only hope. "It is inefficient," Sarah agreed, "but it's also beautiful and it lasts. Fear burns out eventually. Friendship can go on forever." Threll was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something he had never said before, something his people had not said for 10,000 years. "Thank you." Sarah's smile grew even wider. "You're welcome. Now come on down. We just baked fresh pie." The years that followed were not easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. The Korvax Empire did not fall overnight. Fear did not disappear from the galaxy. There were setbacks and tragedies and moments when all hope seemed lost. But the coalition endured. It grew. It changed the nature of what was possible. The Korvax High Council eventually joined, led by the first counselor himself in his final years. The old warrior died surrounded by friends from a dozen species, having finally found the peace he had sought for so long. The Vossans built a memorial to their ancestors, and every year on the anniversary of their liberation, they invited the galaxy to celebrate with them. Earth became not the center of a new empire but the heart of something better, a gathering place, a meeting ground, a home for everyone who had nowhere else to go. The star tree in Geneva grew until it touched the clouds, its glowing fruit a beacon visible from space. Sarah Chen grew old herself, watching the world she had helped create flourish beyond her wildest dreams. When she finally passed, the whole galaxy mourned. They named constellations after her. They told stories about her to their children. They remembered that one ordinary human with nothing but courage and kindness had changed everything. But the most important thing Sarah left behind was not a legacy or a legend. It was an idea. A simple, radical, unshakable idea that had started everything and would continue long after she was gone. The universe had empires built on fear, but humanity built on friendship. And that made all the difference. 1,000 years later, young beings throughout the galaxy learned about the dark times, when fear had ruled and species had suffered alone. They learned about a small blue planet that had dared to try something different. They learned about a woman who had offered pie to a conqueror and changed the course of history. And when they asked their teachers why it had worked, why friendship had succeeded where force had failed, the answer was always the same. Because fear makes you strong, but it makes you lonely. And loneliness, in the end, is the only thing that can truly destroy you. The humans understood that. They understood that connection is the most powerful force in the universe. Not weapons, not armies, not threats. Just the simple act of reaching out to another being and saying, "You are not alone. You matter to me. Let's face the darkness together." The children would nod, not fully understanding. But they would grow up in a galaxy where friendship was the norm and fear was the exception. They would never know how close everything had come to being different. They would never know how much courage it had taken to build what they now took for granted. But that was okay. That was the whole point. The coalition had not fought for gratitude. They had not struggled for recognition. They had simply wanted to create a universe where beings could live without fear, where differences were celebrated instead of punished, where everyone belonged. And they had succeeded. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to change the direction of history, enough to prove that another way was possible. The universe had empires built on fear, but that was the past. The future belonged to friendship. And somewhere in the quantum echoes of spacetime, Sarah Chen smiled. The universe had taken her invitation. The universe had walked through the door. And there was always more pie.